If you're new to this channel, my name is Chris, and on this channel we discuss emergency preparedness, aka prepping. September is National Preparedness Month, and every year I put out a video to help you get started on your journey preparedness. But this year is different. Tariffs are already pushing prices higher, and on October 15th the Supreme Court is going to decide if they will stay. And if they do, you can expect costs on many of the items that we're about to cover to jump as companies run out of pre-tariff inventory. So now's the time to act. The 20 items that we're going to cover today will help you navigate the first 72 hours after disaster. The critical window before outside help typically arrives. Think of these items as insurance policies to get you through the worst of it or even beyond if the situation worsens. Stick around until the end as we're going to be doing a giveaway for this video to help you get started, and I'll share how you can sign up. Water containers. I intentionally start with water because you're not going to last long without it. The average person needs 1 gallon of water per day. You're only going to survive on average for about 3 days without water. So for each person, at a minimum, you'd want 3 gallons of water stored. So if you have a family of, let's say, 5, you'd want 15 gallons of water. Also make sure you're considering your pets. But if I'm being honest, 3 gallons per person per day is really advisable to cover cooking and basic sanitation. But if all you can store is 1 gallon per person per day, then start there. When I started, I got these 5 and 7 gallon containers. They're relatively affordable, they don't take up a lot of space, and they're transportable if there were disaster that force you to leave. Since then, I have added a lot of options to store large amounts of water, but this is a good starting point. You also want a container that's food grade quality, and dark like these. Dark helps to prevent growth as light can easily get in. On the bottom of each of these, you're going to see HDPE2, which is commonly used for long-term food and water storage items. You also want to consider the thickness. This one holds more water, but the material is thin and cannot be stacked on top of each other. This one, on the other hand, is a lot thicker, the material, and you can stack these. So based on the amount of space that you have at your home, you have to weigh the pros and cons of which makes the most sense, obviously based on your budget as well. I have a mixture of both of these around the house. Now, a quick note about these water containers that are clear. My advice is if you do use these for water storage, you want to rotate them on a regular basis as clear water containers can develop growth over time, and you're going to want to store them in an area maybe in your cupboards where they're not getting direct sunlight. Food. For this point, you want at least a several-day supply of non-perishable food. In other words, it doesn't require refrigeration for each person. I advise people on a few things. Number 1 is to get items that don't require a lot in the way of cooking and cleaning. A fuel source is needed in those situations to cook, and that may not be available. Also, cleanup's going to be a lot more difficult, and it's going to use more water if you're having to cook items. Secondly, you want to buy items that can be stored for years. Again, we're talking about buying items and forgetting about them and just storing them away in something like a tote, things that will last for a long term. You want to base how much food on the number of people for 3 days. Now, the average adult consumes around 2,200 calories per day. So here are some items in front of me that will actually meet that criteria. The first is something like a survival bar or something like these. And I've eaten these before. They just kind of taste like honey wafers. I mean, they're all right. They're not super nutritious or anything like that, but they'll get you by. This particular one is an SOS emergency food ration, and this one will hold, or rather has, I believe, 3,600 calories in total. So that's a pretty good amount of calories that are going to get you through a pinch. Now, the next item is canned food. You're probably already going to have this in your home. Just be sure to rotate these. You don't want to pull one out and find out it expired a year or 2 ago and just as questionable. Also, make sure that you actually have food that you'd want to eat. If I had to pull out a bunch of cream of corn and that's all I had to eat, yeah, I might end up starving. So, again, get something you actually will enjoy. Now, the next option, and again, you can mix all these up. They have different price points, and I would just recommend a combination of all these MREs. These are meal ready to eat. These are what's issued in the military to soldiers in the field. These are self-contained with high calories, and they often have a heater built inside that allows you to heat up your food. The next option is freeze-dried food. Now, this does require that you heat up boiling water, not a lot, and then you can pour it in. It'll heat the food up in about 10 minutes or so. And if properly stored, these can last for about 25 years. Again, I have a mixture of all these in my home, and obviously, you want to rotate all of these in your pantry and keep an eye on them to make sure that they're still within the time frame to be able to be eaten. Now, regarding refrigerated food, if the power goes out, you want to start eating those items as quickly as possible. If you don't have a backup power source, which we'll cover in a moment, radio, I have a few different options here in front of me. These are NOAA weather radios. These can pick up the typical AM and FM bands, but they also have the NOAA weather network, which broadcasts emergency information. So, if a disaster hits your area, you'd want to be able to tune into that band, and these devices can allow you to do that. Now, I don't recommend tools that serve multiple purposes are usually not really good at one thing, but for this particular situation I do make an exception. These will often have flashlights built in. They have a hand crank on here that allows you to, crank them up, charge the battery, and they also have USB ports a lot of times on them that allows you to plug in your cell phone, and then you can actually crank with the handle and charge your cell phone through the connection. Now, is it going to take a while? Yeah, you might get tired, but if that's all you have, it'll get you through in a pinch. Now, these do have usually solar on them, but I've had mixed results with those. Again, the hand crank is really the reliable option. Power. Let's pivot the conversation to backup power. As hurricane season builds, it's a reminder of just how critical reliable electricity can be. But the risk isn't just coastal. Storms, wildfires, and even routine grid issues can leave anyone in the dark. Food and water matter. But without power for lights, refrigeration, or medical devices, your margin for safety shrinks fast. Backup power in any season is peace of mind. Gas and propane generators have been the default for decades, but they're loud. They produce fumes, which is a major safety concern, and they require regular upkeep. And if they're not maintained, they may not even start when you need them. And during hurricanes, fuel itself becomes scarce. With gas stations closed and roads blocked, a fuel-only plan can fall apart quickly. That's why more people are turning to whole-home battery systems paired with solar. And these aren't small battery packs for charging phones. They're built to run entire households quietly and reliably. One system I've tested here on the channel, the Anker Solex F3800 Plus, is a solid option if you're looking for a system that can integrate directly into your home. Now, many systems power a few lights for hours, but this unit is built for multi-day outages. Its ultra-low standby draw, just 40 watts, means stored energy lasts much longer than the older models on the market. The ability to add batteries later is key. You can start with one unit and expand as your budget allows up to 27 quad-hours, or double that to 54 quad-hours with a second unit. In hurricane-hit areas, outages can last a week to sometimes months in certain areas. With solar panels added, this setup can keep your home powered almost indefinitely when rationing. With the home power panel, outages are nearly invisible. When you pair two of these units together, giving you 12,000 watts continuous output, essentially grid-level power for critical loads, ensuring your family's comfort, allowing you to power larger appliances like stove burners, well pumps, mini split ACs, or an electric dryer, bringing you close to whole home backup. Now, if the grid fails, selected lines in your home, they switch over in just 30 milliseconds, faster than a blink. Additionally, StormGuard mode adds another layer, automatically preparing your system during hurricane season, so you're ready to ride out the storm safely. Another critical factor is output voltage. Most smaller solar generators only handle 120 volts at around 2400 watts, limiting you to lights and smaller devices. The F3800 Plus delivers both 120 volts and 240 volts through a 6000 watt inverter, enough for refrigerators, washing machines, ovens, microwaves, and more. Now here's a real differentiator with solar generators. Traditional generators are limited by how much fuel you can store. And with solar input up to 3,200 watts, this unit works with rooftop rigid or portable panels, giving you renewable energy as long as the sun is shining. And if you already own a fuel generator, it supports up to 240 volts or 6,000 watts pass-through charging. You can just simply run the generator briefly, recharge the unit, and shut it down to save fuel while maintaining quiet emission-free power. And these will last for quite a long time. The F3800 Plus uses EV-grade lithium iron phosphate batteries, rated for over 6,000 cycles, meaning it can last a decade or more if properly used. The takeaway is simple. Backup power is not just about getting you through the first hours, it's about enduring the long days after a storm. And the difference between a prepared and unprepared household is massive. While one keeps food cold, lights on, and medical devices running, the other faces loss, discomfort, and risk. That's why it's so important to have a system in place before the outage happens, not after. if you're interested in checking out this model, Anchor has provided a special offer for the F3800 Plus and Bundle kits. You'll find the link in the description and pin comment below. Shelter and warmth. As many unfortunately learned from the Texas Snowmageddon of 2021, when the grid goes down in the middle of a deep freeze, you got problems. And maintaining body heat is critical, especially in cold weather. So you want to include things like emergency blankets, things like a sleeping bag, and a portable tent in your kit. This is even a small rain fly that I have in our bug-out bags. It's a smaller setup than a tent, but it at least gives us shelter. Even items like this is, you can pick these up online, or you could even get a tarp at Home Depot or Walmart. The key is have shelter in place, and if you're forced to evacuate, they're going to make a big difference if your home is no longer inhabitable or if it loses heat. Also, things like plastic sheeting. This can be used to insulate windows or leaks on doors. Again, in the middle of the winter, these surprisingly, even items like this can make a pretty big difference. We've covered these types of items on the channel before to help you prepare for winter, and I'm going to provide a link to some videos that will definitely give you a lot more information as winter's right around the corner. Flashlight. A few moments ago on the hand crank radio, we discussed that it has a flashlight built in, but I wouldn't rely on that as my sole light source. Think of that as a backup source. Also, don't assume your cell phone's light's going to be enough. I would highly encourage you to get a dedicated flashlight and keep that stored somewhere where you know where it's at. And you can pick these kind of flashlights up usually at your local hardware store, Costco, or obviously online for pretty cheap, but just be sure to store the batteries separately. I have here in front of me a battery daddy, and I keep this in our laundry room to store our batteries. And it allows us to rotate the batteries as I pull batteries. And as you can see, I've been pulling a lot lately. I need to add some more in, but we rotate them. And then, I always know where they are. Batteries, they can last for years if properly stored. So, you want to consider keeping a pack of Oblé batteries along with all of these items, and again, whatever the flashlight uses. Like I said, I've opened up flashlights before, and unfortunately I left the batteries in, it corroded it, destroyed it, and I just couldn't fix it and had to toss it. Now I keep them separate. I know where the flashlights are, and I know where the batteries are, so in a pinch I can get them together really quickly. First, a kit. If you're just starting out, I would encourage you to probably start with something simple. These type of pre-made first kits that you can get online. And these are good for treating minor issues, things like cuts, burns, pain issues, and there are more advanced options on the market. But if you're starting out, just start with the basics. Now, if you do want to build your own, you can put together a little kit. If you have certain specific needs or things that you want, you can go that route. But typically, what I found with these is they're a little cheaper. And again, I've had this one for years, and it served purposes when we just had some minor issues that we've had to deal with. Tourniquet. So, why a tourniquet? If you're in a situation where there's been a major disaster, the emergency responders are going to be strapped and they're not going to be making visits to your home. They're going to set up a triage area where people can come and get help. If someone in your home has a major laceration and a critical artery has been severed, they can bleed out quickly, and in those moments, seconds count. So basic first aid kits are unlikely to include these types of items. So I would definitely recommend spending the extra money to add them to your kit. Now there are knockoffs online I would not recommend. I'm going to link to ones that we have found to be reliable in the description section. And also this is not technically a tourniquet but very similar. It's called an Israeli bandage. And these a little more user-friendly, and they can be used to pack in a large, wound or any type of laceration. So there are different options, but again, make sure that you add these to your kit. Whistle. These are designed to signal for help if something happens and you need to draw attention to yourself. A good option to have on hand. N95 mask. These are designed to help filter contaminated air. Where I live, we have a lot of fire, so we have these available for our family in our bug-out bags, and it's just a practical solution. Additionally, issues like pandemics, as we saw during COVID, these sell out very quick. So make sure that you have these stored on hand, they'll last for a long time. Bic lighter. Having the ability to start a fire can be important for so many reasons. And I've had people point out in the comments sections of my videos in the past that as smokers, they trust only a Bic lighter. I'm not affiliated with Bic, but I'll take the advice from people that use these on a regular basis. Plastic sheeting and duct tape. Earlier when we talked about shelter, I did bring up the plastic sheeting in that example, but again, I think it needs its own standalone point here. These can be designed to provide you with shelter. And as I mentioned earlier, they can be used to actually seal off windows for insulation. They're designed really for this application to protect you if you have to shelter in place, and windows can get busted. And if you have this combined with some tape, you at least, provide one layer of protection in your home if something were to happen. If a storm is approaching, you're going to want to create an X on the window with duct tape. So if it does get broken, at least it will hold together the main components. Also, if you have a leaking roof, or like we saw and talked about a moment ago, a pandemic where it forces you inside and you've got to be able to seal off your house on the end of things, or the worst case scenario, nuclear fallout, I keep these in my home in case we have to seal off the windows. Personal sanitation things like hand sanitizers, garbage bags, moist towelettes, with some toilet paper that I keep in our bags for our go bags. These are just important for basic sanitation purposes. And I would refer you to a video, and I'll post a link to it below, on building a toilet. Again, having contractor-grade garbage bags could be very useful for that with a 5-gallon bucket. In personal hygiene, it's often overlooked, but it's very important in a disaster. You want to pack essential hygiene items like soap, toothbrushes, toothpaste, and hand sanitizer. Don't forget feminine hygiene products and baby supplies if needed, wrench, or pliers. When it comes to needing to turn off utilities, there may be things like gas lines or water lines. Now remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, that's the way I always remember it. Imagine I've got a, whatever valve or something I need to close off here. If I'm going counterclockwise, that's left, lefty-loosey. If I want to tighten it up, I go right, righty-tighty. That's always remembered in my head when I'm sitting down and having to deal with something like that. So, again, these kind of tools are important. Now, when it comes to, maybe a gas line, what you'll see a lot of times is the gas line can be here, and you'll see there's a valve that's in line. It's just a straight line going across. If you turn that, it will be at a 90 degrees angle to the main line, and that's when you shut off that valve, whether that's a gas line, a water line. And so having these tools, I even have one of these strapped onto our gas line outside of our house next to the valve. Just a real cheap one out there, because if there's an earthquake in our area, I just want to be able to go out there and not have to find one of these tools. I can quickly go and turn that line off. Manual can opener for your canned food in your home. You're going to want to have these on standby. Now, most of you probably already have these in your kitchen, but I would encourage you at least pick up a cheap spare one and throw it in a container where you can store all these items. At least know that you have it. Water filter. You want to put these away for future use. They can store for a long time. Now, there's a couple of options that I usually recommend. The first is a SHARE Mini. I believe that these are designed to process several thousands of gallons of water. I forget exactly how much. It's a sizable amount. As long as you pre-filter the water first, it's got a little squeeze bag here with it, and then a plunger so you can clean it out afterwards. Another really popular one on the option, it does on the market, it doesn't process as much water, but it's kind of a dummy-proof system. This one's got a membrane built in that will allow you to put it into more contaminated or, water that hasn't been pre-filtered, and it will still, it's got a membrane in it that will pre-filter some of the larger, contaminants out, whereas this one's not really designed for that. And again, you just stick it into the source and then flip the cap here and actually pulling, sucking the water through. Now remember, if you find yourself needing to get water from the wild, you want to try to find water that is moving versus stagnant. Also, to ensure that the water is safe to drink, you want to boil it at least for 1 minute at a rolling boil. Cash and important documents. In an emergency, ATMs and banks are likely going to be inaccessible. So you want to keep a small amount of cash in your kit along with copies of important documents like IDs, insurance papers, and bank account information. Now, I store all of these items in our fireproof vault. Just make sure that if you have to run out of your home in an emergency for whatever reason, you know where you put these. And if you've got documents scattered around your house, good luck finding out where they are under a lot of stress. Local and family emergency contact information. In the previous point, we discussed different documents I have on hand, but in all of our bug-out bags and our containers that we have for emergencies, we have pictures of our family in case we get split up. We've got local contact emergency information and family contact information. We also have a lot of critical information describing if we get split up, how to get together, where to meet, where are points of contact. Now here's a little pro tip. If your local area has been impacted, phone services in your immediate area may not be operational. But if you can find a way to call out of your area, it's a good idea to have an outside contact that everyone can call. Think of them as an operator. They can work outside of the impacted area and help coordinate when others call in and give others updates. Just a thought. Books. Couple of books I want to recommend. The first is the SAS Survival Guide, or some type of survival book similar to this. In a pinch, if the internet goes down and you're trying to find out just basic survival information, what do we do in this situation? Yada yada, it covers the primary points. The next one, and this is one that I often recommend on the channel for really one of the first books I recommend people when they get serious about preparedness pickup. This is a medical survival handbook. The one I have here is the 4th edition. I don't think they have a newer one. They're constantly revising and improving this book, and I've had the authors of this book on the channel several times in the past, Dr. Joe Alton and Nurse Amy. They're board-certified physicians, and it's just a great book. That's honestly one of my number one fears is in a disaster, services are out, can't get to a hospital, can't get on the internet to figure out what to do. Maybe one of my children is hurt or whatever. What do I do? This covers the core principles of what you would need to do. Also, I've done a video recently on the channel. If you are interested in prepper books, I would recommend you pick up if you're just starting out. Multi-tool. Lastly, we'll discuss a good multi-tool. These can replace a whole toolbox in an emergency, and they're portable, so whether you need to cut, open, or fix something, a good quality multi-tool is going to come in handy. So look for one with a variety of functions like a knife, pliers, screwdriver, and a can opener. Alright, I know we've covered a lot in this video, and I do want to finish up by discussing physical fitness. It's not a point that I provided, but I can't emphasize this enough. People have pointed that out in my previous videos where I've done talking about the foundations of preparedness when you're starting out. But if you're new to preparedness, I would highly encourage you, if you're not already, get on a path of physical fitness. In a disaster, you may be forced to move, do things that you're not used to doing in a job, especially if you're sitting in a chair most days. So, at a minimum, pick up something like resistance training or cardio workouts, but at least get your body in a position where it can be active if you need it. Giveaway. For the giveaway, all you have to do is comment on this video, give it a thumbs up, and go to a link that I'm going to post below. It goes to our website where we have a giveaway form, and you can enroll there for this giveaway. What I'm going to be doing is giving away the Anker Solix C1000 with an expansion battery. I believe each one of these is a kilowatt hour, so you get 2 when combined together. And what we'll do is we'll use a tool to randomly select a winner, and we're going to announce it on the new segment on our YouTube channel next week. So for this giveaway again, we're going to be giving away this setup. I'll put it in the mail and send it out to you. Again, I'll post all the information below so you can sign up. Now, if you want to go beyond just 3 days of preparedness, I'll post a video here on the side of the screen, and in the description and comment section below called 3 months is all you need as a prepper. It does a great job of breaking down the basics of building your level of preparedness beyond just minimum.